We're about to watch my boy Nikki and try to figure out how much the cost of living in Russia is. I know it's a weird thing, right? Nobody's thinking about going to Russia. They're at war. Oh, they're evil people. But there are people in Russia living just like us. They're trying to live their lives. They're having kids, eating food, going to the restroom. They do the same things as you, and there's no difference. So let's figure out how expensive it is to live in Russia.
I live in St. Petersburg city, and this video I'm going to show you how much an ordinary Russian person can make for a living in this city and what our typical monthly expenses look like. I hope you will understand what's life like in Russia a little bit better after watching this. I received some interesting comments about my last video. Someone from Canada and Australia were surprised to see that grocery prices are much lower in Russia compared to their countries. Someone from Germany and Belgium says that prices are similar, but it's important to take one thing into account: people's average income. If I, or my mother, or any other random stranger in Russia would buy, let's say, a kilogram of tomato for $5, it would feel so much different from getting a kilo of tomato for $5 in another country. Let's say somebody from Germany would spend about 3% of their daily income.
This is a really big thing to understand in all costs of living. The idea that the cost of living, whether or not it's good, is completely dependent upon your income. Any place can be nice. Any place has luxury options, luxury apartments, this, that, or the other. It depends on how much you have to spend on those luxury apartments and those houses. So while things might look cheap to us in Germany, which of course we're comparing our incomes to,
spend 30% of their income for
compared to their income, no.
Exactly same thing. Today we are going to talk not only about food, I want to show you a bigger picture. But first, let's go grab some coffee and a celebration cake.
Nikki seems like a cool dude. Move myself to here.
It's around $500 per month after tax, and here where I live in St. Petersburg, the average official wage is about $900. But what about the real wages? Imagine me being not really fortunate enough to make a living as a blogger. What kind of job could I find here in St. Petersburg, taking into account my personal skills, and how much will I get paid here? Without any specific skills, I could try finding a job of a delivery guy, or hotel receptionist, or a barista. I'll try searching job offers online and give you a breakdown of what real salaries are in Russia for my potential jobs and for other major professions. So what I see from online job offers, there's a lot of barista positions in St. Petersburg, various kind of coffee shops and restaurants, and offer anything starting from 30,000 rubles. And it's not like the salary is fixed. Looks like one part of the salary is indeed fixed and another part is just a percentage from what a barista sells during the day. But this I don't really understand, because like barista doesn't have a control of how many people come over to the coffee shop and what they buy.
That kind of sucks.
Don't know how it works in real. I found really interesting offer. That is a tiny coffee shop very close to the place I live. I think I pass it every single time when I go to Subway. Among all this stuff they write, they say something like, your salary will be above average. Absolute minimum is the average income in St. Petersburg, and the average income at our coffee shop is 36,500 rubles, which is interesting because official average income in St. Petersburg is around 70,000 rubles per month.
Woo!
But
to USD. Okay, so 1,000 rubles is about 12 USD, right? 10,000 then be about 120. 10,000 rubles is $124. So he said 36,000 or something around there. $447 per month. And the average is about, in St. Petersburg, that's where he's at, it's about $869 per month. Better than a lot of third world countries. But
real companies,
of course, the minimum wage from the US is going to beat it out. You're very lucky.
Market shows the real average salary.
Я полистала страницы, спроса на объявление о поиске вакансии, пришла чуть ли не на следующий день.
Okay, I know this is just my ignorance talking, right? My lack of cultural understanding. But anytime I see black Russians, it's always like, whoa, it's a rare breed. This is a unicorn. You know? Where'd you come from? You know, who made you? You know? It's a rare thing. From my understanding.
Шла работать. Ну а до этого я там прошла через ужасные места работы, через собеседования, которые ни к чему не приводили. Вот. Это такая счастливая случайность абсолютно. Средняя зарплата в Петербурге это примерно 18-20 тысяч. Когда люди зарабатывают от 50 до 100. Это на самом деле не всем это доступно, а так примерно люди, правда, тут зарабатывают где-то 20 тысяч. И Питер удобное место, в том плане здесь много комиссионок, много бесплатной штуки, и тут, в принципе, можно жить на широкую ногу и все себе позволять, и при этом очень мало зарабатывать.
I'm glad y'all can see the captions for that. One of the hardest languages to learn.
But what if I try to apply the
Russian
skills that
and
I
Arab.
learned within the last few
Arabic.
years? Like, my English is good and I have a TESOL certification, so perhaps I can find a job of an English teacher or maybe English translator. I also
That's the case for
have
any
some
traveler,
video
anyone around
editing
the world.
skills, so perhaps I can find a position of a video editor for a local company or maybe for another YouTuber. I would say I might earn about 45, 50, maybe even 60,000 rubles
$6,500 to $8,000 per year.
Video editing positions, perhaps
Video
about the
editor,
same money.
65,
The good
6,500
thing
to
is
13,000
that
per year.
it's scalable. There is
I'm
a
done
lot of
moving
room
myself.
to improve your skills and improve your salary, your potential salary as a translator or video editor. Thinking about this, I actually realized that I'm not that hopeless and I could actually do something instead of being just a YouTuber if I wasn't fortunate enough to get such a huge audience to watch my videos. Talking about other jobs' income, here's a short list with salaries per month after taxes. That's how we count it in Russia. This
State hospital receptionist, $270 per month. And they're going to get to the cost of living, so don't worry. I'm pretty sure this video has both the wages and the cost of living. $270 per month, 30,000 rubles per month for cleaner, which is 400 per month. Local fast food, 430 per month. Middle school math teacher, 540 per month. It's crazy, you know, in the U.S. fast food with minimum wage. No place is really paying minimum wage. Or you're getting paid that, I don't know where you're at. And minimum wage in a lot of places is $15, still $7 in Louisiana. So everywhere here is above the minimum wage. But it's $10 per month. It's still better than this at the fast food counter, you know. That being said, how much money are you spending per month out of that $430 per month versus the $10 an hour that you get here to live or to be comfortable? Because if a research scientist is getting paid $1,000 per month, then rent can't be more than about $200 per month max, right? So rent must be extremely affordable in Russia in order for people to be getting these wages and still exist and be comfortable. Mid-level developers, even on Russian apps, I'd imagine, are $2,150 per month. Like, the cost of living has to be extremely low.
info from real job offers I found on a few websites in St. Petersburg City.
Средний уровень, думаю, где-то примерно в интервале 50-60 тысяч рублей. Примерно такую вот как раз сумму и трачу, то есть 50-60, примерно так.
Кем вы работаете?
Научными...
Maybe I should translate. Should I translate? I'm going to translate.
I think
Dang,
pensions
he's doing pretty
for
good.
elderly people, and here's an example of my own grandmother, my mom's mom. Every single month
His grandma worked 33 years as a nurse. Now her pension is 11,730 rubles per month. That's lower than the minimum wage in my hometown. 33 years for that 11,000 ruble pension. Man.
she gets about 10,000 rubles.
That's why they need that
from
BRICS
our government,
currency.
which is clearly not enough for comfortable living. If my granny doesn't have any support from my mom, most likely she will be having like really poor kind of life. Video he uploaded is actually very
And
much
it's a vast country even with the areas nobody lives in. Because most of Russia is uninhabited. Or it's not like heavily inhabited because it's too cold. The earth is in a state of permafrost, meaning it's always frozen and they can't even get down to the dirt. But it's still a big country, even with all that eliminated.
Now let's talk about the expenses, because life in a bigger city is not a cheap thing, especially here in St. Petersburg. Talking about expenses, there are two things that you spend the most of money in Russia. First is accommodation. You basically have to have a place where you
Accommodations typically spend around 30% of overall income for renting/mortgage and minor housing expenses. That's about comparable everywhere on earth, so...
And second thing, obviously, the
Most people spend 30 to 50% of their overall income for groceries. Restaurants is considered to be luxury.
food
Well, of course.
you eat. I would estimate the average expenses for
Spray paint art?
accommodation in St. Petersburg City to be anything around 15 to 20,000 rubles a month. For this amount of money, you will get a normal, quite convenient place to live. Talking about the place to live, let me show you my tiny serviced apartment. A year ago, when I arrived to St. Petersburg
That is clean. I know it's a little studio, New York-sized apartment, but that is clean. As a dude, until you have a kid, you don't need much space to do what you have to do, you know? And I like this
I
little
found
room.
this place and that time I was ruble 1 month of staying here. Then I moved to Lisa's apartment, then I came back here, and currently this place costs 33,500
$450 per month, or 33,500 rubles
a month, which is a little bit above average in St. Petersburg, but I find this place really comfortable. Here's the place I sleep, here's a nice picture of Russian bear, here's
Russian bear.
2 windows, my working station. I'm editing the video and I just realized that
no matter what's going on in Russia, Russia is truly a country that I feel like you can have pride in, even with losing the war right now, you know, and leadership, whatever. Like, it is a cool country. Russians have a very distinct self-image, distinct being. You can't say that about a lot of first world countries. And I guess Russia's not a first world country looking at this income. These average wages. How people are living. I mean, they have all the modern amenities, but I don't know. Because this dude has exceptional income compared to the average Russian citizen.
Random talking about the money stuff. Here's the place I cook food, and here's the place I take a shower and go to the toilet. Talking about other expenses of living in St. Petersburg, for groceries I typically spend about 15,000 rubles a month, and I consider it to be about the average. Of course, you can go really cheap surviving, let's say for $1, $2 or $3 a day. I actually made a video about surviving in St. Petersburg for $2 a day in terms of food, and it was alright. The food was actually even delicious, but it was not healthy, of course. It's very common to a Russian family to spend about...
Now, I say that with the first world country stuff, right? Can any of y'all in the US or any of y'all in other countries survive with $2 a day? Tell me in the comments. Tell me how far $2 is going to get you in the comments. $2 literally wouldn't be you to make it to the nearest store. So let's assume you walk. You walk to the nearest store. You go to the cheapest store you can think of for food, right? Which is the Dollar Tree. You get there, you get one item because now everything in the Dollar Tree is $1.25. So you're gonna get one item from the dollar store. A few cents left over that you can't do anything with. Better start saving. Tomorrow you'll have 2 sets of 75 cents. And if you live in Louisiana, a place with state taxes on everything, add another 10% on whatever you just bought. Right?
30-40% of their monthly income for getting accommodation, another 30-40% spending for their monthly groceries. So spending a lot of money for accommodation and food makes many Russian families, the majority of Russian families, worrying a lot about surviving from 1 month to another month, and having less energy, less desire, and even less courage to worry about bigger things, let's say about the madness that is happening between Russia and Ukraine. The reason I'm making this video and talking about this is not to cry about low Russian salaries, but to show you a bit of reality of life in Russia, so you possibly can understand me and other Russians a little bit better. And I find this quite important and interesting thing to share, because there is a real correlation between how much people earn for a living in Russia, how much they struggle to survive, and how much they support our government, or I should say how much they are afraid to do anything against it. Thank you for being with me. Спасибо and пока.
So I know you don't have plans to go to Russia. I know that's not the point of the video. But especially right now,
you join a dating app.
But Russia will be open again at some point. You will have the freedom to go back to Russia at some point. We'll have the freedom to travel there. Hopefully if things stabilize and they open themselves up back up to tourism. And I know Russia's a place that I want to go to. Again, you cannot fault a people and their culture and the individuals inside of a country for whatever their government's doing. And the Russian people are very cool. Like, individual Russian humans just seem very cool. Their culture seems so interesting. And just imagine what your income, wherever you're at, what your income would do there. How far it would go. How far you'd be able to use it.